that's not so good, but at least it's good to know that people are thinking about this. And we developed this presentation as kind of a joint effort. Bill will be piping in with different things, and I'm going to make him maybe say a few things from time to time. And then David, who you met this morning, is going to go into some more specific details, particularly about CMU and some of the institutes there to follow on. We're going to try to finish off all aspects of the presentation itself within roughly an hour, so that there's a good half an hour time for questions, that kind of thing.
I just want to ask a question that's on my mind, which is that every time we shoot one of these drone missiles, it costs a certain number, and I was wondering what that number is. I heard something like it's $50,000 a shot.
That depends on the drone used and the Hellfire. Most of them are Hellfire missiles, which are actually a lot more expensive than that. But you amortize that over the cost of the lot. So if you're talking about Hellfires, they're in the six figures. But that's a very complicated question to get as far as the cost of it, because they divide up the costs of drone technology between the unarmed drones, which are used just for surveillance purposes, and the armed drones. So you can't get, and I think it's a little bit deliberate, that you can't get those numbers in an exact sense. Yeah?
Will any of you be going into micro drones?
Yeah, we'll be talking about that a little bit. I want to emphasize today, we're not going to get heavily into the technology because we don't want to, kind of make your eyes glaze over. What we wanted to do, rather, was to set up ways of kind of morally thinking about the issues of near war and the changed face of war, and to think, what kind of moral dilemmas does this arise? And you will find, there was a state director in Colorado of the ACLU who said, if something we did today didn't piss you off, we're not doing our job, regardless of what your politics are. Because we want to raise issues here, some of which may be very disturbing as far as how you think about dissent, how you think about everything else, but that's deliberate. This is going to come from almost a pure Gandhian perspective, but it's also going to suggest that there might be violence inherent in the Hacker Act itself, which some people may very well contend with, and we want you to contend with that, because the purpose is to think about what is violence, what purpose does it serve, and as new technologies are brought to bear, like cyber warfare, like automated robotic warfare, how do we change our definition of what violence is? Bill came up, I think you actually came up with this term, but uses it all the time, of chair force, referring to the fact that, the fighter pilot is an endangered species. Most pilots these days for the Air Force are being recruited from video game experts because the drone is basically taking the place of the manned fighter jet or any other kind of warrior type of jet. There will always be C-147s, those kind of things. But that means that the further away someone can sit, be it at Creech Air Force Base in Nevada, be it at Whiteman Air Force Base, the more that they can deny the reality, the humanity of their enemy. If all you see is a blip on a screen, you don't know what that means. Yeah. Now, there is this myth revolving around all modern automated uses of warfare that it means fewer deaths overall. But look carefully at the definitions that are being employed when people talk about that. Because, for example, we've made the case several times that of all the military satellite systems, tens of billions of dollars of systems for intelligence, targeting, communications, some people believe the old 1970s, 80s model of a stabilizing spy satellite world. That was partially true in the Russian world. It's not true now, because a good 70 to 75% of all military satellite systems serve the warfighter. They are there for provocative, in-your-face warfare, and that's what they're built for. And when we say that using these big, huge intelligence systems, this particular spy satellite has a radius here, a full, radius here of 2 football fields to listen in on all your phone calls. This orbits in space all the time. That doesn't mean that we have a more stabilized environment for the planet. It means a more stabilized environment for us and fewer U.S. deaths. which is the same thing for drones. Fewer body bags, but fewer US body bags. And the tough point to make, particularly for a soldier right now deployed in Iraq and Afghanistan, they say, hey, if we rely on a bunch of flights out of Djibouti or Shamsi of UAVs, that means I can go home and I don't die. Well, yeah, that's true, but you have just as many victims. And the people on the other side of that line do matter. Same with Cyberwar. You know, you'll hear Cyberwar is kind of a bloodless realm and everything, but for example, the Stuxnet worm that the Israeli government and the US government probed into Iran's system that controls centrifuges for uranium enrichment, that same worm impacted all of Iran's power plants. It didn't bring them all down. It impacted the capability of them to operate at full power all the time. So anything that ran a Siemens computer that was involved in industrial control was affected by that worm. So it is not true that cyber warfare has no victims. Cyber warfare has plenty of victims. Let me, a second here. Just